Can't hear you.
Uh, can you hear me now?
I can't. Yeah.
Hey, that's what.
Hmm. Now I can't again.
See.
Now I can.
I think it was when I tried to get it back in the stand. Um, anyway, yeah, I think we're good. Can you still hear me?
I can. Can you hear me?
Yeah,
Okay.
magic.
All right.
Oh,
That's
jeez.
great.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait a few more minutes to see who floods in. We had a bunch of new people sign up, so um, you know, we'll just sort of see who comes live, and we'll sort it out. I have a bunch of questions that people have asked me, so I can answer them.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, I'm sure will filter in. So,
Yeah. Yeah, there were quite a few who responded to sign up this month, kind of getting the year off to a really good start, I
yeah.
think. With
Yeah.
how was your year getting off to a great
Oh,
start?
so far so good. It's been really nice. We're in Northern California, so we got, about 5 days of pouring rain and sunshine. I was like sitting out on my deck this morning. I couldn't believe it. So, for coffee. So,
That's nice.
yeah, beautiful and clear and pretty warm now. So, yeah, yeah.
So, welcome, Joanna. We talked a
Hi,
while, and it's good to meet you.
nice to meet you. Hi, Carolyn, and hi, Sherry.
Hi. Nice
I
to meet
I
you.
just ran in from having a meeting and walk running home as fast as I could to get here. So I'm a minute or two late, and I'm sweaty, but that really shouldn't bother you guys.
Yeah, we don't know.
All right.
Um, yeah, we're just glad you're here, and
I'm, thank
people are
you.
still streaming in. And
Right. Okay.
so hi, Consuelo.
Hey.
Yeah, and in a minute when we get enough sort of people streaming in, even if more stream in after that, I will ask you to introduce yourselves in the chat. Um, so be thinking, well, you can go ahead and do it. So basically, go ahead and put the title of what you are working on, if you know it, and what genre you're working on, and your intention for it this year, and then answer the question, what kind of support do you need to meet your goal? Because
Great.
I think it will vary for everybody. And then sort of once, people come in, I'll give a little intro to some people are going to be new. Um, and I'll give a little intro to how we sort of have the Mighty Networks platform as a community and how you can make better use of it. And I also like to listen to you and hear about what you're needing. That's why I asked that question. What kind of
Mhm.
support do you need to meet your goal this year? And because there are some offerings I'm considering making. Looks like everybody's typing away or thinking and typing. Yeah. Um, how's the sound? This is new audio. My podcast
Good.
matchmaker got me set up with this mic. How does it sound to you guys?
Mhm. Fine, very clear.
Good. Well, yeah, she sent me some really good equipment. So anyway, that's good.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. Here comes Mark. Welcome, Mark. Can you hear me? We can't see you yet, but can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Well, Mark, what we're doing right now is sort of we're waiting for people to come in, and just go ahead and put in the chat what your title is if you know it, and what genre it's in, and what your intention for it is in 2026, and then answer the question, what kind of support do you need this year to meet that goal? Have I seen the chat yet? Yes, there's something sticking up on top of it. Yes, Consuelo is working on a fiction trilogy, Canto. No, I think that's all I see so far. So, we can go ahead and do that, and then I'm going to introduce people to sort of what this is and what we can do with it this year and how to navigate the Mighty Networks and maybe take advantage of some of the resources that are available there. Consuelo wants to finish the book, the revision, and it sounds like you're pretty close because we've been talking a bit, and find an agent and a publisher. And Joanna, you're new. Where in the world are you, by the way?
I'm in Oaxaca, Mexico. Oaxaca City, Oaxaca, Mexico.
Oh, that's so cool. Because
Yeah.
one member of the group is in Mexico City.
Ah, okay, good. Carolyn, where are you?
I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Oh, wow, awesome. I love New Mexico.
Oh,
Yeah, very good. And Consuelo, where are you joining us
I'm
from?
in Santa Fe, New Mexico,
Oh my gosh, how awesome.
just
oh,
north
Sherry,
of
Sherry, where are you? Oh, you're on mute.
I'm in Northern California, kind of
Ah,
in
okay.
the Sierra foothills, kind of between Sacramento and Lake Tahoe.
Okay, I know that area very well.
well, I had
And
because of
Mark.
the latest Mac OS update, I have a picture of Lake Tahoe on my screen every day now.
Nice.
Oh,
So I can sort of picture you being between those places.
Right.
And Mark, where are you?
Brooklyn, New York.
Ah,
Yeah.
hey, Mark.
Yeah. And how did you find me, Joanna?
Um, I can't remember, but I've been seeing I must have followed you or registered on Substack to receive postings or newsletters.
Cool.
So it was probably through Substack.
Okay, that's great. Well, I hope there's some posts over there that have helped you. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just starting to explore them, and this looked like such a great opportunity. So,
Good. So you're working on a memoir in search of a title.
well, yeah,
Going to do some
I have
subs.
a title, but I'm not really sharing it yet.
Yeah, yeah. My
Yeah.
title changed, so I think that is typical for it to evolve as you go.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, welcome. Very, very,
Thank you.
yes. Let's see. And yes, there you have your title in the Who'da Thunk. She's also writing memoir, Joanna.
Okay.
Yeah.
The
And
fire hose first draft.
Vara's first draft.
I
Yeah.
like it.
Some intensity there. And I think Consuelo, you stated you were working on fiction, right? Yes, a novel. And Mark, you're working on memoir you've got a book proposal for.
Yep, and through my Substack page. Have you been getting any emails from me, by the way?
Yeah, I think I replied to you.
Okay, yeah, because I
Signed up
I
for
got
them.
these
So.
launching, and there's a lot of technology that I'm struggling with, so I'm checking in on people. But basically, yeah, at my Substack page, I'm one of the sections is memoir, and I'm just like writing it, kind of just putting in excerpts and kind of jumping around in time. So I don't know where that's going to end up in terms of a draft, but I'm just drafting.
It's a great way to draft and be sort of loose about it. It really is. Yeah.
My family's on board, so I gave all my friends a chance to change their names because I'm kind of going deep into what could be controversial waters, just kind of revealing the past, but there's a statute of limitations for 30 or 40 years, so hopefully
Yeah.
I'll be fine.
Yeah. And you might have heard me say this before, but I'll offer it to the group here, especially when it comes to memoir. Just write it true the first time through, and do not worry about the names, and don't worry about there's stuff that you can take it out later. You really need to just be true to the story and the voice of the story and the meaning you want to go give to the reader. And those are so much more important than holding yourself back. Um, and then at some point, you can kind of make a character by character evaluation of just, well, does the content belong? And is the character someone you might need to give a pseudonym to or protect in
Mhm.
some way? Tara Westover has a really good introduction to her memoir, Educated, where there are some members of her family who just did not want her to publish that memoir and did not want to be mentioned in it at all.
Mhm. Mhm.
And there are some that were okay. And she just gives a transparency statement about which ones are the real names and why she changed some of the names that she changed. That is all stuff that you can do later, but you have to get the true story down first. So, and be free of it. Like just not have that just sort of keep blocking you, and
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of people abandon manuscripts just because of that one reason, and I hate to see people do that when you've got a powerful story to tell. So, before we kind of get into some of the questions, I think Consuelos offered a question about support. You're welcome to throw anything into the chat. If you liked the questions that were in my email and you're eager for any one of them to be particularly answered faster, you can use the chat to let me know that too. Yes.
Carolyn, I'm searching my emails to find that list and I can't find it. Can you possibly maybe share it in the chat or um,
Um,
let's see, where would I?
I can probably let me just say it because
It's
I
okay. 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 I'm sorry. I can keep looking.
no, it's
I don't
okay.
want
No, no,
to.
no.
Okay.
Here are the questions that I have heard this past month. Which
Okay. Yeah.
do I write first? This is often a question that people have just they are just beginning to write, so all the ideas come up and show up, and they're all good. So that's a
Hmm.
question. Um,
Hmm.
some
Hmm.
variation on that is if I know I have more than one book, how do I write a compressed version for my first book? And then how do I set myself up to expand
Hmm.
that theme for my next book? So that's a question. For memoir, how do I create a container for my memoir so that it's a memoir can get unwieldy because you can be tempted to write it as an autobiography your whole life.
Hmm.
So that's a question. I'm going to just touch on the questions and then we'll come back
Hmm.
to the ones that people
Hmm.
focus on.
Hmm.
How can I organize a focus group of beta readers for my manuscript so that that beta group is effective and doesn't sort of send you off into some, rabbit holes?
Hmm.
Um, Related to that, how can I use a technical editor to my advantage? And how can I use research to my advantage? And that applies whether you're doing memoir or novel. I just finished Colin McCann's new novel, Twist. He did so much research. But, how do you let that not be the monster that takes over everything? Um, okay. Since we are at the beginning of the year, you've probably been having your inbox just deluged with goals, intentions, systems, all that stuff. And so a lot of people have been asking me about, how do I set up a really sustainable system that does not depend on just pure willpower, but a system that really is sustainable and works. So, um, and then I might have had on there, because I've got this in my notes, your already list is very important. Maybe I'll just talk about that one real briefly first. Your already list is making a list of what you already have done. What already is good, what already is enough, and what you have to build on. And that might be one of the best ways to not get overwhelmed by this sort of season of the year when everybody's asking you to write goals and intentions and all the things, and you're focused on what you haven't done. Um, it might be really good in a foundational way to focus on what you already have done. And and that doesn't mean only limiting it to I have this many pages. I have a book proposal. Um, it could be really just um, more life things in there too. Like I now have a life that really sustains my writing practice. I now have clarity so that I can write my memoir. I already have that. So
Mm,
that's what an already list is.
mm, mm.
So those were sort of the questions I had in the email, and I'm here to answer all kinds of other questions. So which of those seems most urgent for you? Or another one?
Well, I just want to say I have organized a group of beta readers, and I'm really nervous. This is maybe I'm going to throw this out here as an idea. I don't know if any of you are part of a book club, but I have been part of a book club for over a year now, and here in Santa Fe local, we meet once a month, and we choose a book. Different, each of us chooses a book for that month throughout the year, and then we read it, and then we come together and discuss it and take it apart and criticize and give feedback and love it, hate it, whatever.
Mhm.
It's been a really educational thing for me to do that because I've read books that otherwise I would not have read, and some I liked and some I didn't, and that was educational for me to see too. It's okay. You can't, you don't have to please everybody in the world with your book. So that's a very important thing that because I'm a people pleaser, and I just thought I'm gonna write for the whole world has to read this book and love it, you know? No, 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 no.
Well, actually, one thing you might do on that specific question is actually write out who your ideal reader is, because um, the only thing that really matters is the way that your ideal reader receives it. The only feedback that matters is that ideal reader. And what you're kind of asking this beta group to do is really not give their particular preferences because they may not be your ideal reader, but to understand who your ideal reader is and try to sort of wear that hat for a little while they're reading your material. Tara Moore calls it the intended audience, which I like very much. She wrote a book called Playing Big. And she says it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks, it only matters what your intended audience thinks. But I think you could help them help you better if you really sort of articulate who the ideal reader is. And that could be someone who is knowledgeable about Mayan mythology. I happen to know Consuelo's plot. Or somebody who is fascinated and curious about it and wants to learn. That's just one tiny example, but you really want to kind of get pretty specific about who they are. You don't want to do big swaths like women from 35 to 60. You know, you you want to really get this big swaths of like what grabs this reader.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
To identify that readership is, I'm realizing, a really important thing to be my target audience, right? Reader.
Yeah.
And I do believe that this book club members, there's 10 of them. And what I have observed through this last year of observing them criticize or give feedback for these books we've been reading is that they're very high. They're kind of, I mean, not all of them, but most of them seem to be, um, would be in that group of my ideal reader because
Okay, good.
they're worldly, they're intelligent, they're well read, they're interested in religion, mythology kind of things, and um, and they're very honest in their criticism. And I think I really, that's what I want. I want to hear
Mhm.
honest appraisal or criticism or praise or whatever.
So you don't want editing. You want them to receive it as a reader. So one thing, and I think the second thing that might help you is to just write your own sort of club discussion guide questions for them and to see what they engage with. And do make it clear you're not looking for editing. I mean, if they catch a typo, you want to know about it, but you're really not looking for that. The big shock, I think, to somebody who is used to being in a book club discussion group is the difference between reading a published printed book that's already been through several layers of edits and is super optimized to give a frictionless read to the reader who buys the book, and a manuscript that's in progress is they're some people haven't seen that, so they don't know what to do with it. And that's why back to go ahead, do your own discussion guide. One of the things, your biggest question is going to be, what, how does this come across to you? Did you get that? Did you get that the character, you know, I don't know. Did you get that the character wanted this? Did get that the character like somebody died? Did what came across to you? It's the most essential question of all, is to understand what's coming across and then what they're engaging with. And that's where having some book club discussion questions can really sort of steer them into what they're engaging with. But I think your first thing is you want to make sure they get it. Are they following? Are they tracking? You know.
Yeah, and I do yeah, I'm part of me is actually terrified. So of this kind of but I do trust this group, and because I've observed their criticism and observation of other books, and it's very honest, and it's very, and they, you know, they have questions. I wonder what the author, was thinking about here, and da 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 da. And it's going to be fun to be able to answer those questions.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah.
initially in one of our meetings, I did ask for volunteers to read my manuscript. I thought I'd get a couple of people, and then they all wanted to read it.
Well,
So,
good. That's great.
so
That's
I
great.
said, okay, and then I just went into panic. But the other thing, what was I going to say? Um, anyway, yeah. So that's what I'm doing, and it's kind of scary.
Yeah.
And,
Well,
and
another thing that might give you a little bit of a buffer is to have a pretty neutral person be the facilitator
yeah, well,
and
one of
keep steering it back to some of the questions.
leader of the group is that she's very concerned about,
Yeah.
yeah, disruption of this group that she kind of leads. So I think she's going to watch that. And
Yeah.
also the other thing I did, because last year I was assigned, okay, this is your month, you have to pick a book. And I picked a book that is kind of in the general genre of what I'm writing. I didn't even know it, but I was actually priming them to see if they're going to go for this kind of book or not. Written by a Latin American author. It's got a lot of mythology and spiritual and craziness and revolution and all the things that is being myself a Latin American. That's part of what
Okay.
I,
So, yeah, yeah.
they there's a couple of people who didn't like it. It was long, but I was surprised and delighted to see that so many they loved it, and they were very appreciative of being open, of having their the expansion of their reading material to this that they would never have chosen.
Hmm.
Here they were reading this and actually being drawn in and taken up. And so that was kind of my test to see if they would be open to what I'm writing. So that's anyway.
That's great. That's fantastic.
Anyway,
Um, I think we can circle back to some more of those questions in there, but let's go to one of the next ones that someone made more urgent for me. And the one that I see is that Sherry said, first two feel especially pertinent. And that is really, which book do I write first, or a variation of how do I write the compressed version of the book? And if I have one chapter or one theme that seems to be springing out of it, how do I make the distinctions between the two? So those are sort of two different, you know, parts of the same thing, really. So I think that it's about scope and theme is how you answer that question. Um, so scope is sort of this idea of it has to always come back to meaning. What do you want the reader to be left with in the end? So with memoir, it's a little bit, I mean, the temptation is to tell your whole life. But if you unify it under a theme, you can help define the scope so you don't end up including everything but the kitchen sink. So a couple ways to do that is that you unify it with one main dramatic question. So it's a theme. Um, let's say in the case of my book, Boundless, there was a lot about just the fragility of life and what does it mean to live with the knowledge of the fragility of life and then be reinventing yourself in a whole new way. Like what kind of pressure does that put on you to reinvent your life? The catalyst in my story is just the empty nest. But the bigger question is what is the self is my biggest question, which my son brilliantly answers on page 289. The meaning of life. Who knew? The 17-year-old had it in him all along. He's 26 now. But unify it around, like really distill it down, and anything that isn't that does not fit. Um, Anything that is mildly entertaining to you does not fit. And it has to serve that meaning. And one way I kind of get at that is I look at other memoirs and how they have a limited scope. Multiple memoirists are great for that because Dani Shapiro, for instance, and Mary Karr, for instance, they have pretty distinct themes to their books. The Liars Club by Mary Karr is very, very different from Cherry and Lit. She's got a different sort of focus on in those books. And they pick up different pieces of her life, but they're all at the aim of what is that big takeaway that you want the reader to have in the end? And how do I produce that effect in the reader? Dani Shapiro, I don't know if you know her writing, but devotion is very much limited to she's having a spiritual crisis. And then inheritance is very much focused on learning that her father's not her bio father. Um, so those are really two big questions about your life, but she tells them from different times and different voices and different standpoints, and she doesn't include things that aren't that. So that's probably the biggest way to answer the question. Which book do you write first? It's the one where the question is so animating for you that you can't get it out of your head until you write this. It's usually you have some sort of glimmer that you've arrived at a near epiphany about this question, and that's when you begin to write. But I will tell you just my experience as a book coach is that a lot of people are at that near epiphany place when they start. And there's something about the process itself of outlining and drafting and outlining again and revising that really makes you drill down into harder and harder and sharper questions and then produces the true epiphany of the story. Um, I had a client yesterday and she's written all but the last two chapters in the epilogue. So it was my job to help her sort of see, you know, how do I get to my final destination? We got it on the first call. Like what is her epiphany? And there was magic because we had drilled down into it. And that's my answer for that first piece of that question. The second piece of that question is, what if you've got it all mapped out, you've got a memoir, you've got all this, it's got contained in a main dramatic question. You're heading to your epiphany. And all of a sudden you realize that chapter 7 or chapter 8 is so interesting. Like it goes into depths. It expands into new territory. What do you do then? I've got a client like that right now. That's why that question came up. She's got two, and they're somewhat overlapping. One is it's about emotional, psychological, spiritual, financial, and only emotional abuse in a marriage. Not a lot of physical abuse in the marriage, not a lot of domestic violence, but all those other things are pretty powerful spiritual, psychological, and financial abuse. And it's in the context of the marriage she is writing about that she's no longer in. He was a preacher, so it has some spiritual tones to it. It has that setting, and that's going to be in there because it's just in there. But she's at another point in life where she has another book that may be only focused on the spiritual abuse and religiosity and the damage that it can do in one's life, and particularly how it is used um, to hold women back. So that's part of the sorting out process is going, well, if we have a pretty distinct theme for the first one, it's going to make it clear that anything that really touches on the spiritual abuse needs to serve that theme, but that she knows she's got so much more territory to go in. So that's the way I would answer that question. Follow-ups there, though. Is there anything you want to tease out about that? Oh, Johanna, I think you need to unmute. Joanna? Yeah.
Oh, I didn't say I didn't actually say anything,
Oh, okay.
but
Yes, you
but
might
I
be.
can but I can follow up on that. Yeah, that's I mentioned that I know that I need like structure in every aspect of my life, but it's certainly in terms of building a compelling, cohesive story, narrative. And I don't know if Carolyn, I didn't realize that one of your emails that you sent out actually included a question about what I'm working on, and I saw that this
Oh,
morning,
right.
so I dashed off something.
Yeah,
So I don't know if you've seen that, but
I did.
um,
Yes.
okay. So um, I feel my memoir, my story isn't. I can't tell. It doesn't. It isn't feasible to tell my story without including some of my parents and grandparents' stories and my children's stories. Um, and so I have to think, and then and both my parents and grandparents lived very dramatic, interesting, uh, lives.
Mhm.
So, for example, my father was a Holocaust survivor. So, um, and his family, his European family, very remarkable people, etc. So I
Mhm.
have to, but I really appreciate what you're saying about how does it serve the question, the driving, um, what is the character or the narrative? What is this story trying to achieve?
Right.
And so I think that there will be, and my mother's life is also rich and was also rich and interesting in a completely different way. So I imagine that I will be certainly weaving those, rich uh, influences into my memoir.
Mhm.
But certainly I will want to explore their lives and some of those issues
Yeah,
additionally.
you may find that your mother is a whole other book and your father is
Hmm.
another book.
Right, right.
Um, but I say, so first write the book that really has the most meaning for you and make everything serve that. That means when we get glimpses of your mother's story, they're really just, they're the tip of the iceberg. You
Hmm.
know you can go to
Hmm.
more places, but it has to
Right.
serve your question.
Yeah. But
So
I don't want readers to be, frustrated or I don't want, those glimpses to be seem sort of random or confusing or like titillating and like, wait, what?
right,
Your mother
right.
did what? They did that?
Right.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And so that's probably the art of sort of like establishing a character.
Hmm.
The first time a character appears, whether it's fiction or memoir, you want to establish that person. And sort of really in all their essence, even though you're not going to tell that person's whole story. But you establish them, and then every scene after that needs to really it should be compressed. I think that's probably one of the tests is it compressed? Um, the one thing I did with my author she actually had four stories. I mentioned two of them. She says, I really don't know where to start. I got four. I said, all four are great. But I have an outlining tool that gets people through it. And there's something about going ahead and outlining the competing ideas that starts to make it much clearer. It makes it clearer what each one is about distinctly. It makes it clear how much material you have. It also is information for you about how interested are you in this. And I think the other thing that it does is it clarifies whether you're ready. And that in the case of that particular client, her ideas 3 and 4, they're not ready for her to
Mm.
write. I said, which one do you have the most meaning about and the most clarity? Number one. So that's the one we picked, but we picked, in coaching together. Yeah. So, let's see. Is there
Good. Yeah,
anything
thanks.
else? Good, good. I hope that gets you on your way. And actually, if you like, what I'll do is I'll put that um, initial uh, it's a survey, it's a Google form where you can kind of sort out. And sometimes I need to do this too when I'm writing. I got like, you know, this could show up in this project or it could show up in this project, or it could
Mhm.
show up differently in one project and differently in another. So that tool, I'll put it in the email after this, is a really good way to sort it out. It's just a nice drill to go through.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good, good.
I'd like to
Okay.
add something, Carolyn.
Sure, sure.
I've been working with Carolyn independently, and I have to say, I presented her with this 1,000-page trilogy, right? Book one, book two, book three, and it was written according to that. The first advice you gave today is to just write from your heart, just blah, just
Yeah.
express yourself. But it's going to be, I didn't realize it, but I was doing that, but I didn't realize that was just going to be my first draft.
Mhm.
That's the thing that pointed out. And at first I was like, "Ooh," I don't know. It was not a good feeling at first. What? What? What do you mean first draft? I just finished my trilogy. What do you mean? She was very gentle and loving about it. You were, Carolyn. So, and I so appreciate. It took me some time to really grok that, but and then when I realized, of course, she was right, and and then we said about you really helped me with writing the outlines and the synopsises and realize and the big lesson that you taught me about the writing is that this first draft is that uh, expression, that raw expression of everything, blah. And
Yeah,
the second draft is putting yourself in the place of the reader. That was key to my
yeah.
being able to do this revision, because then I said, oh well, the reader's gonna, they have no idea about anything,
Yeah,
right? I've done all this research. I've been working on this for years. I know my characters. I know the story. They're coming in completely blank.
yeah, yeah.
Putting myself in the position of the reader really helped me to
Right.
find.
So actually, if you really want to drill down and test that sort of chapter by chapter, line by line, ask what what information did the reader just get? Kind of what does the reader know now? Maybe that's a better way to ask it because it's not information. What does the reader know and feel now because they read this chapter or they were introduced to this character? Um, that's a really good point. And I had in my novel, I had what I thought was a pretty complicated task, which was to explain sort of a not conventional view of traditional heterosexual marriage that had the hierarchy, or even just throwing away the idea that women need marriage in the first place, or that people need marriage in the first place, that you can really love each other and build a whole life partnership with or without a marriage license. And I had readers in my beta group. It was usually men who were like, what do you mean? I thought every woman wanted to be married all the time. And what most women know is like, yeah, at a certain point in life, you're like, I don't know if I need that. I love men. I love love. I love companionship, but I don't necessarily have to have it with all these other trappings. Okay, so I've articulated a little bit of that, but I'll just tell you that was very hard to articulate. And there was there were a lot of scenes I had to write to show it. And there was a point at which I didn't know whether I had. And I did actually go through the manuscript and sort of pick out those parts. Oh, you really see it when this character says this. You really see it when the couple, there's a couple that's central to the whole book. So the main character is deeply with somebody. She just doesn't want marriage. um, but the sister articulates, the mother articulates, the couple are having a back and forth. So I went through and marked, what does the reader know now? Did it come across? Because I kept thinking, like, I'm never going to be able to explain this to people, you know. So that might be a useful thing to do, but that's a revision technique, I'll just say. Um, so
And also the other thing that, and you'll see it when you see my new version of book one, is focusing on one character. And you helped me with that because there were too many characters and you didn't know who to follow really or who to identify with. So the book one now becomes, oh, maybe like you were telling Joanna about focusing
mhm,
on maybe just her grandmother to begin with. Yeah,
mhm.
that's what kind of I'm doing. It's one character and it's her story. And it really, so I drew all the chapters from book two and book three that were about her. And I just put them all in this one, the book one. It was an
Oh,
incredible process. And also you pointed out to me, there was something about this character telling the story from a liminal space. I don't know if you remember.
mm,
Yeah. So I really expanded on that. So
good.
the narrator I'm so excited about it because it really, before it was just a hodgepodge and it was just unintelligible,
Well,
but
yeah, and you're talking about like centering it on one character, even though you've got two other really super vibrant characters. Um, but centering it on the narrative stance of that character. And that's called the point of narration. And that's also something, especially if you have a memoir and it's unwieldy, or a novel, they can be unwieldy too. But memoirs are often more unwieldy to us because we know all the events of the whole life. And there's just so many more things competing for your attention. In fiction, you have to make it up. Like, the character changes in this way and feels this way, but what produces that? But, okay, what was I going to say about? Point of narration. One thing that really helps you get your arms around a memoir is establishing what that point of narration is. I think it's true of fiction too, because you are talking, Consuelo, about establishing what's the point of narration of your character, and maybe it's from that liminal space. After a certain number of events have happened, and maybe some other events will occur that she can know from the liminal space. But it's the point of narration that matters, and probably I had a mentor who called it the occasion of the telling, and I like that term better because it clarifies. The occasion of the telling is really answering the question, why is the story being told now? And from what context is it being told? And it's probably that accumulation of meaning is the reason it's being told now. And it usually needs to be urgent. That's what usually makes your first pages pretty promising, is that the occasion of the telling is pretty urgent. It cannot be untold any longer. It is time to finally tell the story. And something has happened. Maybe, you know, um, somebody has died. Your son or your daughter has asked for something or needs something, and they need to know this story about you. It's going to be something like that. And probably the test is, I am near the epiphany. I'm very, very close to knowing what the meaning of all of that was. That's usually going to help you get to what is the occasion of the telling. And then I get very specific. So what year, what month, what thing happened to produce the occasion that you were like, I can't not tell this story anymore. It must start now. Harper Lee does this. Everybody thinks Harper Lee's story To Kill a Mockingbird is told through the 6-year-old voice of Scout. If you read the opening pages, it's the point of narration is an older Scout who is reflecting back on those events in that town at that time. So she's had probably a few decades to think about it and figure it out, which is what makes that story meaningful. In fact, I think Harper Lee in all of her drafts, I think Truman Capote was helping her in some for some parts of this. She did not have the beginning of it right for a good while, and it's probably because she needed to find that point of narration. When am I ready to tell this story? When am I really able to infuse it with the meaning that it needs? So I time boxed my memoir, um, which limited it. I wanted, and that was partly so that it didn't end up being 300 stories, book 1, 2, 3, and 4. And it was by limiting it through that question. And the time actually helped me build the container for that one question that was going to animate it. I just decided it takes place from March 2017 to October 2017. If there are flashbacks needed, we flashback. And the flashbacks add meaning to the question about what was happening in 2017. There were some flash forwards because obviously I had gone on living past 2017. And the information that I had in just my lived experience beyond that did infuse, this telling of the story of 2017. In fact, do you know the poet David Whyte? Yeah. Well, I had he wrote the epigraph, or his poem is the epigraph of my book, and he gave me permission to have it. And I met him in 2018. So I had occasion to bring my book to him, signed it and all the things. And I said, you know, I hadn't met you yet, but really, your footprints are all over this. Like the influence of your poems are all through this. But I time boxed it. Like, his name's not on the page except for the epigraph. Just so I hope those are some ways in on that question for you. A lot of what I've been talking about is doing the meta around your book. Yes.
Yeah, could I just a
Yeah.
couple of terms I understand sort of instinctively, but I wonder if you could sort of explain them a bit more. Container for your story and liminal space. What do you mean by those phrases?
Okay, container for your story really just means, um, one example of a container is a time box. March 2017 to October 2017. One of the others is probably another container for your story would be geography.
Mm.
For instance, Liars Club, she's got several locations there. When you change location, she keeps it in that container. In fact, I was going like, oh no, I want to be in Texas some more. And then they moved to Colorado. But that's a container. And she doesn't tell you all the things that happen in between Texas and Colorado.
Right,
She
right.
jump cuts. She goes forward. And as beautifully written and powerfully written as the Texas scenes are, she knew she was done. It was time to cut to Colorado. So those are containers for your story. Yeah.
Okay, very clear. Yeah, thank you.
Time and place are usually really, really good containers.
Got it, right.
There's something sort of beyond that is shape, but you can only really know the shape of your story after you write 1 or 2 drafts, but that shape will emerge to you. A really good craft book on this is Meander, Spiral, Explode by Jane Allison with 1 L.
Will you say it again?
Meander,
Meander?
Spiral, Explode. She talks about structures and containers for stories. Meander, Spiral, Explode.
Got it.
Yeah. I'm typing it in. I feel like, well, it's so funny. People have told me that my book, Boundless, is the hero's journey, has the hero's journey all over it. And other people have told me, oh no, it's not that. Because that's so, patriarchy. She said, it's a spiral story. It's a feminine story. It has a feminine structure. And I actually love hearing both of those things because it was my intention to do both. But yeah, you won't really know your shape until you draft a lot of pages. But if you're looking for patterns, you'll see it. And that shape can really inform what you leave out and what you reveal when. Sherry had her
Thank
hand up
you.
there.
So thank you so much. So, partly through these meetings, I started, I've written a chapter that would be for the reader. And, I had considered memoir for a long time. And, of course, the fire hose is like everything I can remember from, my first memory. But
Yeah.
they talked a lot about, and something that happens that is a really pivotal story in your life. And so it's not really the book that I thought I was going to write, but it feels like the story that needs to be told.
Mm.
And basically, I am fifth of six siblings. And in starting in 2013 to 2015, I lost three siblings, one to suicide and two to cancer. My husband had open heart surgery kind of in the middle of that like even the dogs died. But it was a crisis upon crisis upon crisis. So I've started with, just jumping right into the first episodes that happened. And I feel like because it was a time a lot of us came together because of, things that were going on. Like I'm writing really more about them, obviously from my perspective, but I feel like right off I have to have at least little tidbits about who they have become and my relationship to them, their relationship to each other. And but my concern is partly that, it's about what I'm doing in the situation, but it's describing their personas and reactions probably more than my own.
Oh, okay.
At least at this point, because it's like, how else do I
It's about how it's affecting you,
mm-hmm.
not what they're
Yeah,
doing. And what they're doing may be producing that effect in you, but it's also your choice to see it that way.
right.
Doesn't mean they're doing it, just means you
Yeah,
see it that way.
yeah.
So I think equanimity is the sort of the test that I use with that. Um, you know, how is it coming across to you, or how is it coming across to you at the time? And you might not have been right,
Mm-hmm.
but it was coming across that way too at the time because that's the way it felt. You have your, world that makes perfect sense to you.
Right.
But equanimity really allows for that room to, they may have experienced the whole thing differently. And
Right.
siblings often do.
Yeah, yeah.
You
But
mentioned,
we've
yeah.
come to the realization that we all grew up in different families, really. I mean,
Yeah,
our,
and some of it is,
so
it
our,
depends on how cooperative the real person in your life is with the idea that you're writing a story about this bigger theme that's bigger than
mhm,
your life or even their lives. Um, because some people, they're just not going to even want to touch it. But other people are going to go like, I'm willing to be in conversation with you, even though I see that differently.
mhm,
I want you to have that exploration of that question.
mhm,
And so one thing that you will see a lot of memoirists do, like Mary Carr's sister remembers all of the events completely differently from the way
mhm.
Mary Carr renders them in, for instance, Liars Club. And Mary Carr's sister let that be, and Mary Carr learned how to have the conversation so that her sister could let that be.
Okay.
The equanimity allows both things to be there, even if they seem to collide, even if there seems to be friction. You allow the space for both things to be, or in her case, her mother had a whole different perspective too. So
Mhm.
there's three people letting it be. You know,
Right.
sometimes
There's
it
a
comes down to that song, like Let That Mystery Be. You ever heard that?
Mhm.
I think Irish Dement does that song.
Okay.
So if that helps you, sort of, and also you mentioned just briefly, you mentioned that all these losses occurred in a very short amount of time and it was very compressed. That's a container. So it could be contained by time, but it's going to contain everything. It really is. It's by having this event, it's going to hearken to something that was unresolved before, and it may help you get to your theme. So
Right. I already had to do, got to a point where like, okay, to understand that, you have to get a little backstory on how they got there. And,
yeah,
it's, it's,
yes, yeah.
Sherry,
Okay.
I just want to make a
Okay.
short comment. From what you're telling us about your memoir, my sense, and I may be wrong, is that it's about getting, like Carolyn just mentioned, all those things happening in this container of this time frame, that you are overwhelmed. I mean, the initial thing is to be overwhelmed by this, but then the narrative is how you got through it, learned from
Ex-
it, and then you have something to share with others
Mhm.
about how. And then what came into my mind when you said that one line, I thought, wow, that would be a great way to start. Even the dogs died that year.
Oh,
I love that. You just said it. And I just thought, that's the first line. I mean, that's, I'm just,
pregnant first line.
uh-huh.
then
Yeah.
it draws you in. It just,
Uh-huh.
great line. The way you said it, it was just like, it was funny, but it was tragic at the same time. And, that's what life is. So
Yeah.
anyway, I just wanted to throw that out there.
I
Good. Thank you
appreciate
for
that.
adding
Yeah. I
that.
mean, it was so relentless and there was not time to grieve for one before the next thing hit. And just finding that equilibrium, and you have to you're changed, but you have to, or at least I had to make conscious choices about what I was going to do with that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's
And
unique.
Joanna adds here that Tara Westover includes the differing memories about she and her siblings. And I think that's a valid thing to include in memoir.
Hmm.
It's,
She's
like,
very deliberate about it. There's a specific scene that's quite traumatic, and she says, "My among the 3 or 4 people involved, we all remember that very differently." And she says, "So this is how this character or sibling remembers the story." And she doesn't do that throughout, but in that particular scene, it's sort of fascinating. It's like it sort of shatters the whole, you know, well-contained narrative that's going along, and this happened and then this happened, and but here,
Hmm.
like, who knows what happened because we all remember it differently.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. That's a really great suggestion, to speak with my remaining siblings about, what was happening for them. And, one of them was present, during a lot of it, and we would work together a lot, to try to, be supportive, et cetera. But the other one was much further removed, and I don't really know about uh, how she was reacting. Yeah. So thank you for that context.
okay, Mark has a question.
Yeah, I've got a couple. The first one is, how do you include the equanimity? Like,
Uh-huh.
I was talking with that because I want to, like, kind of show the other side, but I don't want it to get too far afield from my perspective. So I kind of, like, even though I know people that grew up, over the years of our family, blended family, we all kind of came together by the end. But I'm kind of leaning towards just including my warts in all perspective, because I'm 16, 17 years old, and I don't want to do that thing of the wonder years where you're looking back with all this wisdom of 35, 40-year-old man, because that's not true to the story. So I
Right.
wonder about how to include equanimity, and where the lines are. And then I want to get back to the defining liminal space.
Okay, yes, good. I see that. Okay, equanimity. Okay, I think equanimity is really, there's two pieces here. They're going to sound contradictory. Equanimity is really allowing that space for someone else's experience to be differently. When Tara Westover does that, I think it feels shattering because everything she's told you before seems visceral, and it really seems very much in her. There's something very shattering about that that speaks to the larger thing, which is Tara Westover was trying to figure out what her reality was, having grown up in this survivalist family. She was trying to find her center, her being. That particular passage is her trying to find that in the middle of her dad thinks he's doing this right. Her mom thinks she's doing this right. So that's where I guess I'm talking about maybe there are doorways in the story where that equanimity can serve. I think equanimity is also kind of a stance to take when you're writing a memoir, that your sibling may tell a completely different story when your sibling writes his book. So it doesn't necessarily have to get on the page, but it really needs to be sort of a stance that you have. But at the same time, I also want to say memoirists are pretty narcissistic. You get my permission to be narcissistic for a while because it really matters the meaning that you make of it. You allow that other people have had different parts of the experience and that the things that they do in your story um, could be perceived differently or had different effects on other people. But if it affected you the way it affected you, it affected you the way it affected you. You know, it did. And that's, I guess what I would leave you with. Um, so liminal space. What's liminal space? Liminal refers to that threshold between things.
Okay.
Right, and it's often used. I mean, it's the threshold like you're either outside of the house or you're inside the house, but it's often used in spiritual sort of contexts. The Irish Celtic mythology use it a lot of just because the Celtic culture is so much more aware of that the membrane between life and death and the spirit world is thin. So you'll often hear it referred to as the thin spaces. And so liminal, like if you're in sort of in writing, is we have wonderful ways. We have so many tools as writers. This is what makes writing so interesting, is you can kind of go into the imagination. Just the imagination itself is a liminal space, but also just that membrane between life and death, imagining like what it might be like to be floating in that near-death experience or be seeing the whole story from the other side. That's essentially a couple of different ways to think about liminal space. Consuelo has a character who might be in between life and death.
Yep.
Yeah.
There's a famous novel that uses that. A long time ago, I read The Lovely Bones.
Oh, yes. I was thinking of that. Yes.
Yeah, murdered teenager who tells the story from her own wherever she is after death.
Yes.
Tells the story of her rape and murder and follows. I read it, but I don't even remember what she focuses on in terms.
Yeah, I read it and then I watched the movie with Saoirse Ronan.
Yes, the movie was very good.
Yeah.
Very good job.
Yeah. Well, that's probably the last question we can take, but I want to just remind you, we'll be here on the second Wednesday next month in February. And so
Quick question. Oh, sorry. I
yeah.
want to get. What about that
Oh.
space called the tiny? What is it? The tiny. Isn't there like a space where we can contact each other between sessions? It's called
Right.
tiny something.
Right. So it's called Mighty Networks.
Mighty
So
Network.
so if you are a member, you have access to the Mighty Networks community, and it is a place where you can be talking to everybody all month long. And if I see you all are talking, I'm gonna, join in and spark that conversation. There are two specific nurture pods in there. They're like sort of sub groups of the group. And one is for memoir and fiction writers, and the other is for self-development, self-help and transformational nonfiction. Because there's some people in the group who are writing in that genre. And those are people who are writing book proposals and that kind of thing. So there's two groups in there where you can actually share your work. You can or share a snippet of your work. You can say, "Oh, I wrote this establishing scene for my character. What do you get from this?" It's just it doesn't you're not going to get super big critique, but you are going to get some reactions like, "Oh yeah, that really struck me. That this character looks like this or does this." So. So that's a place to do that. If you are an existing client, it's 27 a month to be in the group. And if you are not a client, it's 47 a month. If you become a client, you get back down to that 27 rate. Um, so
Guys, group. How do I find our group through signing up Mighty Networks?
I'll send you a link if you do not
Oh,
already
okay.
have it. I will send everybody a link so you can get in there because I do want conversations. I want you to feel like you got a space where you can have these conversations. And I often will post resources in there like, I really believe in reading like a writer. So there may be a book that I say, like, if you are really looking at how to master dialogue, please read Colin McCann's new book, Twist. If you're really looking for how to establish a character scene, I would say Colin McCann's Twist. I just finished reading it. So he's like fresh in my mind and he's a master. And he has a great craft book called Letters to a Young Writer. So there'll be things like that in there. And I can make sure that in the follow-up email, I send all the links to all those things. I want to make sure you know how to navigate around in there and get the most out of it.
Joanna, where are you in Mexico, did you say?
Yeah, I'm in southern Mexico, basically. Oaxaca is the state, and I live in the capital city, which is also Oaxaca de Juarez.
Okay, all right.
Mhm.
Okay.
My daughter and my grandchildren are there right now in
In
Jalapa.
say again?
Jalapa.
Ah, okay. And
Near
where are you from, Consuelo? You mentioned you're Latin American.
South American origin, Cuba and Chile, and grown in Peru, raised in Peru.
I lived for 2 years in Chile before I moved to Mexico. Would
Yeah,
love it. Yeah, yeah.
I have family there. Yeah.
Good.
Um,
Good.
I've
Well,
read-
we hope to see you next month, Joanna, and I'll send you some resources too. In the email, I'll also have the resources to sort of start answering some questions that help you sort out your outline, and also that bigger question of if I have one or two or four books,
Mhm,
which one do I
mhm,
write first? So that'll
mhm.
be in that email.
Okay. Thank you so much for including me today.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, I always invite people to come and check it out at least once, and then actually, if you do end up signing up, there's even a free trial period beyond that, so you sort of almost get 2 months free.
Okay. Good to know. Thank
Okay.
you.
Well, I look forward to seeing you all next month. Mark it down on your calendar. It's 11 a.m. Mountain Time on Tuesday, the second Tuesday of the month. I don't have
The
it.
11th? I think it's the 11th.
I think you're right about that.
Mhm.
You're pointing to a real calendar, so I'm going to believe
I
you.
do. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I like paper.
It's a Tuesday, second Wednesday.
Oh, did
Second,
I say the
yeah.
wrong thing?
Wednesday is the 11th. Sorry. Yeah. And
Wednesday is
Wednesday
the
is the
11th.
11th.
Second
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Okay. Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So
Right.
mark that one down on your calendar. Okay. Well, see you guys next month. As I always say, be brave, be light, be you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Take care.
Thank you, Carolyn. Thanks, everyone.